But, Cello, let's start today. It was survey day. The NFLPA released their second annual survey. This is the players grading the organization from everything from ownership to the coaches to the locker room to the treatment of families. It's a really fascinating peek behind the curtain in terms of where the Broncos rank, not only in their own world, because this is just like a letter grade, A to F, but also around the NFL. Have you gotten a chance to look at this survey?
No.
And before we start, how much value do you take in something like this, the players filling out this survey?
Well, I mean, obviously it kind of gives you the lay of the land of the league. I don't know how it correlates to success on the field. I think I heard the end of it with Zach and Phil, but I'm not going to spoil anything, but I don't know that it goes hand in hand with one another.
Sure, but I think also it shows you where guys want to play and where maybe they don't want to play.
Yeah.
And I think that's important in the sense of, hey, if we're getting all Fs and a guy's in free agency down to Team X and Team Y, why is he going to pick the one where the players constantly ripped everything about the organization?
No, it goes back to like one of those Disney movies, right? Like Little Giants. They didn't have the cool unis. They didn't have the sweet helmets. They were using toilet paper to practice catching footballs. But in the end, they won, Will. So there's your lesson learned.
All right. Well, we will get to all that stuff as we go here, but let's get it rolling with the locker room. And this, I want to make it clear, this grade is from Broncos players on their locker room. This is not the locker room at Empower Field at Mile High, because they only use that, 10 times a year? This is the locker room at Dove Valley, because we know they redid the one at the stadium and it looked awesome, but this is a grade for the one those guys are in 5-6 days a week every time throughout the season, and they got a D for their locker room down at Dove Valley after getting a D+ in 2023. Remember, this is the second year of this survey, so they regressed from a D+ to a D. Andrew Mason writes, size matters and the locker room just isn't big enough. Just 61% of players felt the locker room was large enough. 31% of players felt there wasn't enough room in their lockers with little or no personal space. You and I have both been in that room. It is not real big, not real fancy.
No, and for all the updates and renovations they've done over at Dove Valley, I haven't been over to that locker room in a few years, so I'm assuming if they haven't made anything, I would agree with the grading as it was. You make it sound like when you were in school, you remember if you got too many kids, they bought a mobile. They brought the mobile in that was outside, so the practice squad players had to go outside to like a different teacher to get dressed.
Well, Philip Lindsay was actually saying on the drive they had to put fake lockers in the middle of the room to get the practice squad guys to have lockers. I mean, it was that tight. So you're kind of saying it tongue-in-cheek, but it was actually true. They had to bring in portable lockers to make sure that everyone had a locker, active roster and practice squad. This is a big reason why they're putting $145 million into Dove Valley. I guarantee once that project's done in 2026, this will be an A. But for now, it's a D.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, especially with this new age athlete, Will. I mean, look at what collegiate organizations are doing. You have different jerseys. It's all about the glamour because these kids grew up playing, Madden football where you could change jerseys and have all this cool stuff. And now that they're becoming young men as well, when they enter the league, they're looking for the same thing because you could say there's a handful of collegiate programs that are way better than what sits over there a couple miles away now.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah, you go to Oregon or Bama, you're going to get your mind blown at those places. Heck, any SEC school, you're going to get your mind blown. Treatment of families was a D+ in 2023. It was a D+ in 2024. Andrew Mason writes, the unchanged grade reflected the lack of daycare facilities at the stadium on game day, according to the NFLPA. Denver ranked tied for 17th in this metric throughout the league. Hey, man, it's a little thing, but I kind of get it. You got to go play in the game. Your significant other wants to watch the game, and you got 3 little kids. You don't want to have to worry about what they're doing during that time. So I think it's it's the ultimate definition of first world problem. People use that term. It's like, these guys make a lot of money. They can afford a nanny. But it would just be easier if they had daycare to drop their kids off at before the game.
I guess my question then would be, what would you do to improve it?
The treatment of families?
Yeah, what are we going to put a Little Tykes in Empower Field so that they're all good and they can go hang out on the jungle gym? Like, I don't know. I mean, obviously it's enough of a red flag that it's like a D+. I mean, they don't like to give out a lot of D+ as well.
No, go ahead.
They give out a lot fewer D+ than they do Ds.
Right.
I mean, that means you were just on the brink of being average.
So what happens, I think, and Rachel Vigil was talking to me about this today, they want a quote-unquote family room where, like, the families can just gather, and maybe in some stadiums that's suites, right? Suites specifically reserved for families, whereas these guys, we don't see the shots of Sierra with the other wives like we do in Kansas City with Taylor Swift and all the wives. I think they're all kind of separated and all around because they're all getting their own tickets. I'm not saying they have to pay for those tickets, but it's not one condensed space for everyone who's a part of the family to watch the game together. Maybe consolidate it.
Yeah, well, you could do that, but you obviously don't see a lot of children in those pics. Watching a game. When they pan to somebody in one of those suites, it's not like you got the whole fam with you.
Well, they're in the little Tykes room, like you said.
Like Drew Brees is one of the few that I remember where they would pan to like his wife, and you could see his boys hanging out there with her. So it's, if it is like a child care thing, I guess I would wonder what other things went into that grade.
I don't know. We'll
the
have to
food on game day.
Well,
the service on game day.
It's funny you bring that up because the next one, this is players, food service and nutrition. This is the Walton Penner Family Ownership Group effect. Okay, in 2023 they got a D. Now that was when they had just inherited the team. They didn't have time to bring in their own chefs and all that. They were doing what the team had always been doing under the trust. Now they got a B+ in this category. That's a huge improvement. D to a B+ means what those guys are eating, they like it. It's probably healthier. It's probably more gourmet. And may sound a little silly, but they spend so much time there. The better fed these guys are, that will lead to better performance. This was one of my favorite categories to see this increase so dramatically year over year.
Yeah, I mean, it was a focal point for them in the offseason. They said, bring me your finest meats and cheeses, and they got it. I mean, it was pretty cool. Even when we were going back, like year in and year out, when you walk through there, it was still pretty nice. I mean, it's not like it's a college cafeteria or anything, but it could be improved, and it sounds like they did it.
The weight room went from a B+ to a B, 19th in the league in this category. Again, to me, that falls under they're going to have a brand new weight room once this new facility is done. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I don't think we can judge the new ownership group until that facility comes up on things like weight room. And let's be honest, a B is not that alarming. They're not lifting rusted weights from an old gym somewhere.
I mean, I don't know that they have Russell Wilson's weights with his logo on the side of it, like we saw in this hype video today. But it's an important thing, and you look at that, and it's these players that are just grading it, correct?
Yeah.
I think they would put probably more stock into who's telling them what to do with that equipment. And the amount of money that's going to be infused into that property over the next couple of years, these grades will be kind of, gone by the wayside.
Strength coach went from a B+ to a C, which is interesting. That's a reflection on a lot of players like Lauren Landau. He got moved on from, the grade went down. Mace writes, the grade dropped because only 80% of players felt they received an individualized plan, which ranked 27th of 32 clubs. So, new strength coach. Listen, man, I think with strength coach, it comes down to injuries. And the Broncos, it felt like, had so many hamstrings in 2022. And it was this guy's on IR, this guy's on IR, this guy's on IR. This year, they actually stayed relatively healthy. So the players may not like that they get an individualized strength plan. I got to be honest, dude, I care much more about health, and it felt like injuries were a lot less of a story this year than they were last year.
Agree, 100%. Who was the guy who got let go before Lauren Landau? Because it was that was the same thing. There was a rash of injuries, and it wasn't just one season. It had kind of accumulated over a couple years. James knows it. It's like his favorite guy to go after. It's Rich something, I believe.
Oh, Rich Tootin?
Is that him? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
If it's Rich Tootin, I don't want to slander anyone, but he brings up Rich Tootin an awful lot.
Yeah, I think that's who it was.
Training room went from a C+ to a B-. Again, that's basically unchanged. Training staff went from a C to a B, so that's more of what we're talking about. Hey, they were less injured this year. Team travel, B+ last year, B- this year. They're on a private jet. They're in 5-star hotels. I don't really understand why you can be a B-, other than the fact you have to take a lot more guys on a plane, including staff, for an NFL team than, say, you have to do an NBA team. So they're not exactly flying in the private jet lifestyle. They basically just have a United 737 that has been transformed into the Broncos plane.
And I kind of assumed everyone did that, but when I was driving back over, I was listening to Phil and Zach, and Phil was saying that Miami's got a double-decker plane.
Wow.
Like
Double-decker?
Double-decker plane.
Wow.
So obviously they're going to be at the top of the league.
All right, Greg Penner, let's add an extra layer to that jet, baby. The biggest ones, though, are obviously the owner and the head coach. And the Denver Broncos owner, the Walton Penner Family Ownership Group, earned an A from the players. And they're 13-21 in their 2 years owning the team. They haven't had a winning season yet, but they earned an A from the players. And I think that's important because it shows that they are investing into this team, and the players notice it, and they appreciate it, and they are one of the highest-ranked owners in the league.
I would assume it's also because they know a little bit more than we do of what the vision is going forward. And they probably have a timeline of, like, we told you this was going to happen then, it happened, and we got all these steps along the way that we're going to continue to improve this club. And I think the players know that, well, even more so than we do, and they kind of probably graded on that as well.
You know what's funny? The lowest ownership score went to the Kansas City Chiefs, who received the rare F- from their players. Clark Hunt got absolutely ripped by his players in this survey, and one of the biggest reasons, after they beat the Eagles in the Super Bowl, he promised to renovate their locker room, and you know what he did? He only replaced the chairs in the locker room. That was the only thing he did to renovate it in the, gosh, I don't know, 4 months they had in between.
But you're also talking about a team that's won back-to-back Super Bowls and is in the middle of a dynastic run. And we're talking about he's getting a grade as if he's the owner from Major League. You know, get rid of the plane and you're going on a bus now.
You may have 3 Lombardis in the last 5 years, but if you're Clark Hunt and you see this, you cannot be real pleased waking up today going, we've won 3 titles. I've given you a lot of money, and you're going to give me an F- and rip me like I'm Dan Snyder? I mean, come on, man, an F- because he didn't redo, and he blamed it on time. Oh, we went too deep in the playoffs, so we didn't have enough time to redo this locker room.
Do they share a stadium with anyone anymore?
At Arrowhead?
Yeah.
I doubt it.
Like, wasn't the Kansas City Real, weren't they there for a
No, there's a new soccer stadium in KC now. Yep, there is.
So it's like, what was delaying you from doing so?
It was messing up, and the players let you know how they feel, giving you an F-. So kind of funny, the Broncos get an A in ownership group, and the Chiefs get an F-.
One's a world champion, and one is outside the playoffs looking for a new quarterback.
Yeah. But here's the thing, is I like Greg Penner. I really do. I think he's made a ton of good decisions. The only decision I've disagreed with in his 2 years here is retaining George Payton, and I vehemently disagree with that decision. I have no idea why he's retained George Payton, but he's also 13-21, and Pat Bowlen at one point had more Super Bowls than he did losing seasons, Super Bowl appearances.
Yeah.
We got a long way to go to live up to Mr. B's standards. So even, saying, oh, he got an A, he's coming in, he's replacing Pat Bowlen, let's pump the brakes a little bit here. He's 13-21. The players like him, and that's great. That's a big step. You know who the players also liked? Mr. B. You know who the players also won for? Mr. B. That's the next level we got to get into.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know is he around enough for that. I think he kind of changed that this year to be more prominent within the community, and especially over there, because that was one of the things that Pat Bowlen did. He was down on the treadmill every morning, so all of his players got to see him, and they all said, he's the most competitive guy in the world and one that you would want to go to battle for. And I agree with you. If you can take that next step here and then put a product on the field with it, it'll be glorious considering what we've dealt with over the last 8 years.
Yeah, Ryan Harris, who's one of the tackles on the Super Bowl 50 team, told me in his first stint with the Broncos, when Mr. B was still super involved in the day-to-day, that he used to do 300 flights of stairs on the stair stepper every day in that room.
Jeez.
And anyone who's ever done a stair stepper, you do the thought of doing 50 makes me gasping for air. And he used to do 300. So, yeah, you're right. It was like, oh, I need to get an extra set in because there's my 60, 70-something-year-old owner doing 300 flights of stairs.
Yeah.
I can probably get an extra weight rep in here. All right, last one, coaching. This one surprised me. Sean Payton got an A-, graded tied for 13th with Doug Petersen of the Jaguars, D'Amico Ryans of Houston, Brian Dable of the Giants, Shane Steichen of the Colts, Frank Reich of the Panthers, and since dismissed Arizona's Jonathan Gannon. A-, seems high, right? Especially after the whole Russ debacle. I almost wonder, when did they take this survey?
I was just going to ask you that. Because you take it at 1-5, you're probably going to get a different result than you do when you were when you were in the playoff hunt. And I doubt it was right at the end of the season. I think it was probably in that portion where the team was seeing some success and they had seen a turnaround a bit.
By the way, I read that backwards. Frank Reich is the one who has been since dismissed from the Panthers. It's Jonathan Gannon, of course, still has a job with the Cardinals. But, yeah, I would be curious because if these guys took this week 14, hey, we're on a 5-game winning streak. Sean's doing great. Sure, A-. They take it week 18. Hey, none of us knew except for Courtland Sutton about the benching. Maybe it's a C. I don't know. Worst grade in the league. You want to guess on the worst grade in the league?
For coaching?
Yeah.
Someone who probably didn't finish the year.
Correct.
Who is it? Is it Frank Reich?
Nope. It's an old friend, Cello.
Give it. Who is it?
Josh McDaniels.
Oh, I completely forgot. When did he get dismissed? Because I completely forgot about him.
KJ, when did Josh McDaniels get fired?
We'll say week 8.
Okay, somewhere in the middle of the year, yeah.
Has he been hired anywhere yet?
Bill Belichick doesn't have a job, so I think Josh McDaniels, therefore, doesn't have a job. He gets a D overall. Number 1 team in the NFL overall in this survey was the Miami Dolphins. As mentioned, the Kansas City Chiefs were 31st. Do you have, I guess when you kind of look big picture on this thing, does it make you feel more optimistic about the Broncos that, like, hey, at least the players like the owner and the coach, who are the two most important things besides the quarterback in the organization?
You want my honest opinion?
Yeah, I do.
And one that I think would probably echo within Broncos country? I don't care. I personally, as a fan of the team, I don't care. I mean, I get that they filled out the survey. We got the results that we got. Until this team, what I think Broncos country wants more than anything, I don't care if you got that F. Tell me if you're upset in Kansas City right now because you were ranked 31st in the league after this survey was, released. I don't think anyone in Kansas City is upset with what this survey said. They're just holding their hands up and showing you their rings.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously think that that's the biggest hole to poke in. It is, hey, they got 31st and they've won 3 Super Bowls in the last 5 years. But on the other side of the coin, I do think player morale, and I think the little things when you're spending 14 hours a day at a facility, they do matter, and I think the Broncos are improving on a lot of those, which maybe this is me being optimistic, will help them in the future. That it's on an upward trajectory, at least based on some of the grades like we saw, the meals going up 2-letter grades this year.
The thing it's going to be interesting, though, is because a lot of those guys that may have filled out this survey aren't going to be members of the Denver Broncos come August of next year.
True, but they're probably – I don't think they're lying on this survey. I don't think they have any
No,
incentive
but what
to,
I'm saying is
yeah.
some of those guys that may have given strong grades for whatever of these, they may be gone. It's going to be a new crop. I mean, all signs are kind of pointing to a rebuild here, and a lot of these pieces, even some of the more prominent ones, may be on other rosters next year.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point for sure. You can read all about it at denversports.com. Mace has the details, all the grades of the NFLPA survey. All right, let's get into some combine stuff from today, Cello. The Broncos will meet with 2 elite Pac-12 quarterbacks at the combine. That's according to Jake Shapiro on denversports.com. Michael Penix Jr. of Washington and Bo Nix of Oregon. This is on top of J.J. McCarthy last night. People get excited about these meetings, but the reality is they're 18 minutes. And I think in 18 minutes you can certainly lose a job, but you can't win a job. If they really want you, they'll bring you out here next month, get you at the facility for a day. What do you make of these 18-minute interviews and the Broncos? Okay, we're going to take the time with McCarthy, Nix, and Penix.
I think it's kind of like speed dating. I mean, I agree with you 100%. That first impression probably means something. And if there is interest or some kind of a connection or, they like a certain thing about a player there, they're going to do more digging. They'll show up at a pro day. They will invite them in to work out personally. So I don't put a ton of stock into it because I'm with you. I mean, 18 minutes is a finite amount of time, especially if you're talking about trying to go find your franchise quarterback. But it's the first step along the process. And we're finally getting there, where we're starting to get more momentum of like, we still don't have an answer on Russ. We're supposed to get that in the coming weeks, but a plan kind of being laid out for us to kind of say, okay, now we understand what you're shooting for.
But you can say something really stupid in 18 minutes that can get you crossed off a draft board, no doubt about it. I mean, if you go in there and they put you on the whiteboard, and they ask you a very basic coverage question and ask you to draw up a play, and you just totally blow it, and they're like, oh my gosh, we can't draft this guy, they could cross you off the board. And frankly, maybe Broncos country wishes Paxton Lynch had done something like that in 2016, because in hindsight, a lot of people worried about his ability to read defenses and read the game.
Yeah, and how committed he was to it.
Yes.
Which is scary, because if he could pass that, and it wasn't only the Broncos that had interest to select him. There are a couple other teams, some pretty prominent teams.
Dallas.
And Kansas City that, that he got past that step with them. It's a lot like, Will, when you go to meet your girlfriend's parents the first time. You are buttoned up, right?
Mm-hmm. Or you better be.
Yes, ma'am. No, sir. Thank you. No, thank you. It seems like you'd have to mess up pretty bad to blow it within that first 18 minutes of meeting somebody.
Penix, McCarthy, Nix, what's your 1, 2, 3 on those guys that now confirmed the Broncos have met with? I'm still waiting to see that they've met with Drake May. Because, by the way, there's a list of teams meeting with Drake May. The Broncos aren't on it yet. I understand if you think Williams and Daniels are going 1, 2, you may think, hey, that's just silly. But if May is falling, I want that to come. We haven't gotten that yet. So let's stick with the 3 they have met with. How do you rank those guys 1, 2, 3?
McCarthy, Nix, Penix.
Okay.
That's, it's obviously these things can change as, I don't think, is he going to throw at the combine?
He is.
Okay, he'll throw at the combine. It's Drake May that's planning not to throw.
Caleb Williams isn't throwing. Jaden Daniels isn't throwing.
Yeah, so, it'll be interesting to see how he does towards the end of the week. But I told you I've always kind of liked his story. I like the kind of competitor he is. He goes about it kind of more like a hockey player. I always reference the interview after the Rose Bowl game where he wouldn't touch a rose for that month or so until they won the Rose Bowl.
Yep.
I like that style. And was he asked to do as much as some of these other quarterbacks? No. But that doesn't mean he doesn't know how to do it.
So I would agree with you that McCarthy's my 1 on that list, but I'm tempted to flip Penix and Nix. Not because I think Bo Nix is going to go lower than Michael Penix. I think Bo Nix is going to go in the first round. Michael Penix is going to go day 2 or even slip further. But I think the upside...
Why, because of injury?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the upside of Michael Penix Jr. is higher than Bo Nix. Dude, Bo Nix is 24. He was in college for 6 years, played for 2 or 3 different schools. At some point, Bo Nix is as good as he's going to get already. Whereas Michael Penix, I understand he was at Indiana for a while, and I understand he was at Washington for a while. But he had moments, particularly like in that national semifinal against Texas, where he wowed me. And Bo Nix, I never got that wow factor. So that would be the only pushback I would give you on the 1, 2, 3 there.
I agree. I don't agree with you. I would still keep Nix second. I don't really want either one of them. If I have to rank them, that's the way I'm going to go. If either one of those are your selection, I'm not going to be thrilled about it. One, for Nix, for the same reasons you said. Penix, for me, is injuries got to be a concern. No, you can try and scoff at it as much as you want that they don't. For me, it was more about, and I've told you this before, the pressure he faced in the national title game, he didn't react to it well. And, you had, people keep saying he played an easy Pac-12 schedule. I don't know that it was super easy. I still was pretty impressed by his senior season over there. But that one game where he faced constant pressure, and it looked like by the end of it, not only was he beat up, but it looked like he was beat up mentally, like he was ready just to be done with that game towards the end of it.
Yeah, no, you make a fair point there. Hey, guys, if you could help us grow our Denver Sports YouTube channel, we would really appreciate it.